So if you own an EcoBoost F150 like the 1114 sitting behind me, then you've probably found out by now that a cold air intake is, simply put, one of the easiest ways that you can make more power out of your truck, right? And that's for a simple reason. When you throw an intake on an EcoBoost powered truck, it'll actually tune itself, modifying air and fuel, so you don't have to tune the truck with a device. That normally excludes a lot of cold air intakes with other vehicles, but it allows you to make some pretty good performance gains. Now, which intake should you go with? Well, if you're looking for one that's really affordable, you want something simple, you want something that looks relatively OEM, then you should be checking out the S&B cold air intake sitting behind me with their dry extendable filter. Again, at around the $299 price point, this is currently one of the least expensive options, and it's also one of the most affordable closed element design. Now, when you're looking at all those intakes on the site, you really have two primary things to choose from. You got closed element designs like this one, and you got open element designs, and they both have their pros and cons. An open element design looks a little bit cooler because you can see that high flow filter and it's exposed, and you usually have some sort of cool heat shield, but it's not going to insulate that filter as well. It's not going to make as much power as a closed element design. The closed element design kind of looks a little bit more boring. It might not look as aesthetic, but what I like about this one in particular is that they decided to throw a really cool little plexiglass window over top that dry extendable filter. And that actually plays a couple of roles. Number one, it obviously looks a lot better. You can see that filter underneath, and this filter in particular is actually washable and reusable. That's why they call it an extendable filter. All you gotta do is blow it out with compressed air, and that's another purpose that the plexiglass window serves. You can keep an eye on the filter without having to pull it out all the time, and that's nice because it protects it, especially if you take your truck off-road, you get any water or mud up underneath the hood there, you're not gonna worry about hydrolocking your engine. Now, the other thing that's nice about this intake, again, besides the fact that it doesn't require a tune, is it's CARB certified. It's legal in all 50 states, so if you live in somewhere like California, normally you would not be able to pass emissions, so you don't get to enjoy those performance benefits, but S&B has you covered on that end. And the install for this one's also very easy. I'm actually gonna give this a 1 out of 3 wrenches on my difficulty meter, and honestly, guys, it shouldn't take you more than 30 minutes to an hour to get this installed. I would recommend this as a great first mod if you haven't done anything to your truck yet. All right, guys, to install your intake, you'll need a standard drive ratchet with an 8mm socket, and depending on your model year, you might need a T20 Torx bit. You'll also need a Phillips head screwdriver, and optional but helpful tools include some extensions. All right, so removing your factory intakes, very straightforward. All you're really gonna need is an 8mm socket. We have to loosen a couple of band clamps, but before we do that, we're gonna tackle our intake temperature sensor. It's a little red clip down here on the bottom. Just go ahead and pull on that with your fingernail, give it a little bit of a squeeze, and it should pop right out. Once you've done that, go ahead and take your ratchet and your socket and tackle this first clamp, securing your intake tube to your air box. All right, now we're gonna remove the top of our air box. It's secure with a couple of clips right here. Simply press on them with your thumb to release them. You can pull the top of the air box free. All right, next we're gonna tackle both of our turbo side clamps here. And once we remove both of these clamps, we can pull our intake tube out from the engine bay. All right, now that second clamp is tucked down pretty far, so you'll probably need at least a 10-inch extension to access it. Now you may have some breather hoses connected to the intake tube. Simply remove those as you pull it out of the truck. All right, we have our factory intake removed. Now we can get a quick comparison here. You guys can see some of those similarities and some of those differences that I was talking about earlier. And obviously the big improvement here is S&B's new dry extendable filter, which again is washable and reusable. Obviously these factory paper elements look pretty bad after a short few miles, and well, you can't clean them up. They're very restrictive even when they're new, right? So we're ditching all this stuff. But before you get rid of your factory intake, you gotta make sure you pull your intake temperature sensor. We're gonna swap that over to our new intake tube. In the case of our 2011 truck, we're gonna need a T20 Torx bit to loosen this guy up. All right, next we're going to install the adapter plate for our sensor. You want to make sure you orient it in the correct way, and you also want to make sure you have this little foam gasket underneath it. Helps seal it so you don't have any air leaks or anything like that. And you'll be grabbing these Phillips head screws in order to tighten all this stuff down, so you'll need a Phillips head screwdriver. Now when you go to put your sensor in place, you want to make sure the little diode is facing towards the inlet on the intake tube itself.
All right, last we're going to install the barb fitting here for that little hose that we popped off. If your truck does not have one of those hoses going into the factory intake tube, then you'll need to grab that little Allen head plug provided in the kit. Now keep in mind, these are plastic threads, so you only want to hand tighten these in place. All right, our sensor's in place. Now we're going to throw the intake tube into the top of our new air box, and we're going to secure our filter. In order to do that, you'll need that same 8mm socket that we were using earlier. And before you do that, make sure you got one of these clamps here on the air filter itself. Now, because we're fitting this plastic through this giant rubber O-ring here, it can be a bit of a squeeze. So it's helpful to actually spray on the inside of this using some WD-40 or some PB Blaster or some other type of spray lubricant, make it a lot easier. All right, and again, once the tube has cleared the box itself, go ahead and throw that filter in place. All right, we're all finally ready to throw our new intake into our truck, so go ahead and grab that 8mm socket and ratchet. Make sure you got all those rubber couplers here on the intake tube itself with the appropriate band clamps. I'll meet you over the truck and I'll show you how to get this bolted down. All right, so when you go to throw this guy in place, the first thing you want to do is line up the top of your new heat shield with the bottom of the factory air box. And then once you've done that, go ahead and clip down all those metal clips that we removed earlier. There's 3 of them in total again. And with the new plastic heat shield, it might be a little bit of a squeeze. All right, once you got the new heat shield cinched down to the bottom of the factory air box, you're going to come over to your intake tube portion here. Go ahead and wiggle both of those in place so both of those rubber couplers line up with the turbo side of the factory tubing. All right, now that our intake tubes are secured, we can tighten down those band clamps. And again, you might need an extension for this bottom one just because it's tucked down there pretty far. All right, now we're going to throw our plexiglass window on top of our new heat shield here. You'll need these 4 Phillips head screws in the kit, and you want to make sure you put those little rubber grommets underneath them. Separate the heads of the screws from the plexiglass itself. That way it doesn't crack when you go to tighten them down. All right guys, we're just about done. All we have to do is plug in our sensor again. Make sure you push down that little red tab to lock it in place. And you're going to reattach that breather hose that we removed earlier to that barb fitting that we just installed a minute ago. All right, so once you got your sensor and that breather tube back in place, that'll wrap up this very easy install. And that also wraps up my review of the S&B cold air intake with their dry extendable filter fitting your 11-14 EcoBoost powered F150. I'm Travis, thanks for watching, and for all things F150, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.